All right, welcome back to this second video of a 5-part series that will show you guys how to use Revit, at least on the seismic design team. And the goal for the second video will just be to introduce you a little bit further to the template and the things that have been shared to you. As well as that, we'll also look at how to place columns, how to define them properly using the Properties tab. So on my screen right now, I have the template open, just the same one as I showed you last tutorial. Again, my Revit is 2024, but hopefully that shouldn't be too much of an issue. And as I mentioned previously, we'll start at the plan view called base top, which is the top of your base plate. And we'll just use that to put our columns and nothing else. So let's go see how that works. Base top, all right. So as I had mentioned previously, you have the 8 grid lines that were provided to you before. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom, and A, B, C, D on the right. The nomenclature is just to separate things to make it easy to see. That's all right. So to put columns into Revit, you have to go into either your structure tool and pick column, but as I see here, there happens to be one in architecture as well. Let's just start with column. So if we click on column, a column will appear just behind my mouse. And we want to place these columns wherever they will happen to be for our tower. And whenever we place the column, it places the center of the column at whatever intersection of lines that we have marked on our plan views. So if I wanted my column to be centered between grid lines C and 2, I could do that here. But if I wanted, say, the top left corner of my columns to be at grid line C2, then that would be a lot more difficult, and I generally don't recommend you try to do that. Let's just figure out how to put our grid lines or design lines, which is a different type of line that I'll show you, such that we can place our columns nice and easy and keep going from there. So I'll press escape to get rid of this column, and we'll make those center markings. And the way that you do that in Revit is that you have things called design lines. So right now, without touching my keyboard, I had pressed escape already. I'll click DL, and that'll bring me to a design line. So again, I can click into whatever corner, it'll snap, it'll make a line, and that is a design line. I can then use that to place a column on top of it. See? And again, midpoint is a triangle. The edges of something is a square or an intersection. You see it pop up briefly in pink. That's all right. The other cool thing with design lines is that they only appear on the view that you drew them in. So right now I have my, my 4 grid lines, my base plate around the perimeter, and my design line in the middle. Well, if I change from base top to level 1, you'll see that my design line is no longer there. So that's something you have to be kind of cognizant of whenever you are designing these buildings. But having a type of line that only shows us in one view is very good because it keeps stuff from being too cluttered. So let's go back to base top. All right. So in the current state of ways that we build a tower, the beams make the perimeter of the tower and kind of hug the columns, if that makes sense. So to find the center of our column, as defined by this grid, we will have to cross that beam and then go halfway across the column. So for this demonstration, I'll make design lines. Let's assume that the base of our column, or our allowable floor plan that we can build in, is 12 inches, as you can see on the top there, by 12 inches, as you can see kind of in the middle of the screen, a little bit on the left. So if I make a design line going kind of on that perimeter, I can use the offset tool to offset myself a length of a beam and then a length of half of a column so that I can be at that center point. So if I click on the design line, just left clicking, you'll see at the top here there's an offset tool, also a shortcut OF to use it. So if I click OF, I get the offset tool. You can choose your offset at the bottom here. So I will choose 1/8 of an inch or 0.125, and I'll make that line there. So this should be the outermost perimeter beam, and that's what it should look like. So then to make our column, we have to make another offset to go halfway through that column, right? Because it'll be defined by the center. So let's use that offset tool again. OF, we will offset by 3/32 of an inch, which is half of 3/16. And we will do that. I'll use the offset tool here. Boom, 332. And we'll do that. Bang. All right. So that is the line where half of our column will be. So now let's do the same thing. I'll just delete this line for the side here on the left so that we can place that column. So again, design line, which is DL, left click, nice. Click escape to get my pointer back. Go back to the offset tool. We will offset by 1/8 to start. And then offset again by 3/32 of an inch. There we go. And this should be the center of our column, right where my mouse is. So let's go put that there. Structure, column, boom. There we go. So for now, I can delete all of these design lines. I don't really need them anymore. But I do have my column. So let's go to our 3D view and see what happened. You'll notice that this column is rather small. It doesn't look like, the actual column that we're going to use. It only has the part of it that's under the base plate, or I guess under the top of the base plate, which is good, but not exactly what we want. So how do we define it so that the top of this column actually goes to the top of our tower or to wherever we want our column to go? Well, let's go back to base top and let's click on this column here. And usually whenever you click on a column, a beam, a brace, even the base plate, on the right hand side of your screen, a properties tab will open. And it's from that properties tab that you will say, hey, I want my column to start here and I want it to end here. If you do not see it, you'll have to go into this top kind of coupon here, view, user interface, and we'll turn on the properties. And here it is. So as you can tell, right now I'm looking at a 316 by 316 mass timber column, which is amazing. It's exactly what we want. But if you look under constraints, the base level of our column is the bottom of our base plate. That's okay, because that's where the column should start in real life. And the top level is base top. Well, that's not right, because this tower should be at least 2 levels high. So to change that, you just click here onto top level, hit the drop down menu, and pick whichever level you would want your tower to end at. For now, let's click level 2. Let's click apply, and let's see how that looks in the 3D view. Oh yeah, and as an aside, to move around Revit, I tend to only use my scroll wheel. So if I want to see the column, I'll scroll in, and then if I want to go see the other column in the other corner, I would scroll out like so, and then zoom in here. That's why it's very important whenever you are going to use Revit, make sure you have a mouse, because doing anything otherwise is quite bad. Obviously, there are other ways of using Revit. If I hold down my mouse scroll wheel, I can then kind of pan around, but that's not usually how I do it. All right, anyways, let's go check out the 3D view. And oh my God, would you look at that? We have a column that is defined properly. Absolutely amazing. Now let's make all of the other columns. For this example, I think we'll just keep an 18 by 18 base and do a 12 by 12 tower. So it won't look exactly the same as the summer tower that I had showed in the previous video. It'll be a lot fatter, but that's all right. We'll just learn how to do this for now. All right, back to base top. So now that we have one column, one of my favorite tools to use in all of Revit is the mirroring tool, since it is very quick. So if I click this column here, you'll see there's a mirroring tool. So since we have one of our columns already defined, proper height and everything of the sort, we can just mirror it across kind of a symmetrical axis on our tower and draw everything very, very quickly. So I'll delete these two design lines that I had before, and let's make some design lines that'll make the halfway marks of our tower. And the easiest way that I have found to do that is that it's really just a tip and trick that I found out in AutoCAD. If you make a diagonal line here, the midpoint of that line will make up your axes of symmetry. And that's quite useful for when you want to mirror stuff. So I'll draw kind of my vertical symmetry, my horizontal symmetry. And then we can use the mirror tool from there. So I'll click on my column, use the mirror tool, and if I click this detail line here, or design line, it'll make this column here. And just for clarity, let's go back to the 3D view, see exactly what happened. I just mirrored this column exactly as it was built before with the exact same properties. Just to double check, we can go see again, although I have absolutely no doubt that it will say base bottom and level 2, the same type of column. So we know we're doing fine. All right, back to base top. Now I can click both of these columns and mirror them using this line here. So to select multiple things in Revit, you want to select the first thing, hold down Control, as you see the little plus sign is now beside my cursor, and I can hit the other column as well. And now both of them are selected. If you miselect something or you select too many things, if you hold Shift, you'll see the little minus sign behind my cursor, and that'll unselect something. So let's go back to selecting these two, click our mirroring tool, click our axis, and there are our 4 columns. I can get rid of these design lines because I'm absolutely done for columns. All of my 4 columns should be already made. And let's go see how that looks in the 3D view. It looks absolutely amazing. Congratulations. So that is everything that we will learn in this second video. We learned a little bit more about the different types of line. So the first video we had grid lines, and now I just showed you about design lines. I showed you guys how to use those design lines to place the center of your columns where they have to be. And I showed you guys how to define your columns based on their properties with a little bit about the mirroring tool as well. So in the next video, we'll keep building our tower. We'll go straight towards the beams and the floor plan. So hopefully you enjoy. Keep being attentive. Have even Revit on your own computer as well to follow along. But otherwise, thanks for joining me.